When I was in medical school, like everyone else, I made friends with a classmate. Once Natasha, that was the name of my friend, told me a terrible story that happened to her father many years ago. Her father, as a young man, got a job as a night watchman in a mortuary. The work was not difficult, and the pay was good. Her father's name is Dmitry. So, when meeting with the shift, Dmitry noticed that he was behaving rather strangely. The shift worker called Natalia's father aside and began to explain some rules of work in the morgue. They included the following. It was mandatory to wear a pectoral cross, in no case to walk along the corridors of the morgue, and after midnight to lock yourself in your room with a padlock and a latch. He strongly advised not to leave the premises at this time, no matter what happened. But Dmitry did not attach any importance to this then. On the very first night of Dmitry's work, a colonel was brought in for an autopsy. His relatives were categorically against this autopsy. The chief told Dmitry to be careful that night, as anything could happen. The evening was calm and quiet. As expected, at 10 o'clock Dmitry went around everything and retired to his lodge to watch TV. To the man's surprise, his replacement left a note wishing him good luck and a bottle of vodka. Dmitry, of course, put all the tableware aside and turned on the TV. A little after midnight, the man heard a creak and incomprehensible rustles in the corridor and went out to look. At the end of the corridor, Dmitry noticed the silhouette of a man. Naturally, at that moment he thought that it was hooligans who climbed in and shouted that he would call the police. But instead of answering, the silhouette rushed towards the guard. But the gait of the unknown person was strange, he seemed to hobble. Soon Dmitry saw that the man was completely naked and blue. At that moment, the man was very frightened, his heart began to pound furiously, and he ran into the lodge. There, Dmitry locked himself on the latch and reproached himself for not listening to his replacement and not preparing the keys to the padlock. It turned out that the protection at that time was only the very heck. Suddenly, someone began to scratch and break on the door. The man heard behind the door both an angry groan and wheezing. The scratching of the door continued until 3 in the morning. When they subsided, Dmitry slowly crept up to the icon hanging on the wall and glued it to his chest with tape. Then he took out a bottle of vodka left by the shift and drank almost half in one gulp. The man shook until early morning, listening to the terrible sighs and groans that were heard not far from the door. His replacement came early in the morning. For a long time the man could not bring himself to open the door, but nevertheless he went out. The chief who arrived at that time was screaming loudly due to the fact that the dead colonel, who had been brought the day before, had green paint under his nails in an incomprehensible way, which was not there during yesterday's inspection. Dmitry was in serious trouble. The door to the lodge was green and scuffed on one side. At that moment, Dmitry realized who was under the door that night. After listening to the angry boss, the man went to the nearest store and bought a box of vodka for the shift. After the incident, Dmitry has changed a lot. He retired from the ill-fated morgue.